Hello and welcome to episode 93 of the HamCorp Training Manual. In this episode, we look at the Beamline in excruciating detail. I will analyze every step very closely, and I hope this allows this video to serve as a form of updated documentation. Get ready for a lot of math and a small bit of real physics. Buckle the fuck up, employees. I've started looking at how each of these components works in detail. And it's quite complicated, and it's kind of not well documented. I mean, it is and it isn't. It is documented, but I think the documentation quality could be improved in a few ways. So first of all, in-game documentation is horrible. There's like basically nothing. And on the wiki, there is some information, quite a bit, and I don't fully trust it. So I do want to verify that all the numbers that it predicts actually line up with what I get here. And so far, they kind of have. So far being, I've only looked at the source chamber. And for the source chamber, I've only tested out tungsten rods. Because there are other rods I can use. I can use the long lanthanum hexaboride rod, but I don't have lanthanum hexaboride. And lanthanum is kind of expensive, so I'm a little hesitant to use this at the moment. So I've been testing with tungsten rods because they're cheap and I don't care if I lose tungsten during testing. So let me explain the source chamber. You can produce 3 types of particles in the source chamber. You can make the alpha particle, you can make the neutron, and you can make electrons. There is kind of no reason to make neutrons. Well, I don't want to say no reason, but for this use case, there's no reason to make the neutrons because the neutrons will not get accelerated in the LINAC, and also they're not charged, so when they're accelerated, they don't emit Larmor radiation, which is the photons. So they're basically useless. Like, in terms of physics, if you put a neutron beam in a synchrotron, it wouldn't generate light. So there's no reason to make neutrons. So I'm not going to consider that, and I'm not going to verify these numbers or anything like that. A similar thing with the alpha particle. It is charged, so it would technically work in here. But the electrons are just better in-game. So I'm just going to look at the electrons. Hello, this is me from the future. I came back to edit this and make a small correction. So actually there is a real-life physical reason that the electron is used instead of alpha particles, and that is this equation. So this is the relativistic Larmor formula. This is the amount of power emitted from an accelerating charged particle in a synchrotron in the form of photons. So everything outside the parentheses is just a bunch of constants, so you don't have to think about them. But the gamma squared minus 1 squared, gamma is the Lorentz factor, and this is a number that is purely determined by the velocity of the particle. And as the velocity of the particle approaches the speed of light, gamma becomes infinite. If you think about it, the alpha particle is way more massive than the electron. So at the same energy, it's moving a lot slower than the electron because of mass. And since gamma only depends on velocity, gamma is way larger for the electron than for alpha particles. So the power emitted in the form of photons is a lot larger for the electrons than for alpha particles. And that actually lines up in game. In game, if you try to use alpha particles, it says not enough energy for photons. That makes sense. I'm impressed by that. Well done. So here we have a couple of parameters that are given to us in NEI. Last episode, I predicted that the 1000 kiloelectron volts stated here would be at infinite input energy, and it is. It asymptotically goes to 1000 kiloelectron volts. So I need to provide infinite input energy to get 1000 kiloelectron volts. But this is a computer game, so things are discrete. So because of rounding, it is eventually going to be 1000, even at a finite number. But that doesn't matter. What's important is that I provide enough energy that it's close enough to 1000. And at ZPM, which is the energy hatch I have here, it produces electrons at 999.996 kiloelectron volts. That's close enough, if you ask me. Where does this number come from? So here is the formula for the source chamber's output beam. This formula is a little annoying to me because some of these numbers are not available in-game, and I had to go to the wiki and find it there, which is kind of dumb. But anyway, so the energy of the beam is equal to the minimum of these two numbers. E sub p max is the maximum particle energy for a particle P. I don't know what this is, but according to the wiki, it's 5000 for the electron. 5000 kiloelectron volts. Okay, sure. I can verify that it is 5,000 because my numbers check out with my portable scanner, but I didn't verify this for any of the other particle types, so I don't know if those values are accurate on the wiki. E sub p recipe max is the maximum energy of the beam that can be produced by the recipe. So for tungsten rods, it's 1,000 kiloelectron volts. For lanthanum hexaboride, it's 5,000. And then R sub p is energy ratio, which is another number that is not in-game. This varies with recipe. So for tungsten rods, it's 0.1. For lanthanum hexaboride, it's 0.3. Don't know what this is. But again, I can verify that it works for tungsten rods. I'll check lanthanum hexaboride later on. V sub p recipe is the voltage requirement according to NEI for a specific particle P for that recipe. So for tungsten rods, it's 7,680 EU per tick, and actually it's the same for lanthanum hexaboride as well. And finally, V provided is the actual voltage you provide. In my case, this is ZPM, so 131,000 something something. And crucially, on the wiki, according to how it's named, it seems to me that those two are backwards on the wiki. On the wiki, it says EU in minus EU item, which in my head, if you convert to my variables, would mean V provided minus VP recipe, which is backwards. So that was a little confusing, but I figured it out, so I'm happy about that. And this does work. So if I put in my values over here, I do get exactly 999.9956. So nice, I get how this works now. And so do you. Next up is the linear accelerator. As a reminder, this is the machine that takes in the electrons, sends them through an alternating electric field, and at the end you get more electrons, the same electrons, but now they're moving faster. And I am both happy and sad to say that I've found a mistake in the wiki, I think. The length of this multi-block, for me, is 19. That is the minimum length. And the numbers I got when I scanned the multi-block during my test do not match up with the formula on the wiki, which is bad news. But the good news is it's close, and it was so close that I was able to fix the formula. There are two aspects to this. There's the energy, and there's also the focus. The focus goes down as the particles travel through the linac, but let's talk about the energy first, and then we'll come back to the focus. Here is the energy of the beam as a function of a bunch of different things. So L is the length of the linear accelerator. V is the voltage that we supply to the linear accelerator. So in my case, L is 19 and V is ZPM. So, you know, whatever, 130,000 something. E sub I is the input beam energy. So this is the output energy of the source chamber. So in my testing, it is 999.9956 kiloelectron volts. E sub P max is the same thing as before, which is this parameter, which I don't know where it comes from. It's 5,000 for electrons. Very important note here, on the wiki, it doesn't say L minus 1. It says L. So the wiki does not match what I see in game. And that kind of worries me, because now this kind of confirms for me that I can't trust the wiki as it is today, on the 29th of April 2025. So I do need to be a bit more careful with how I set things up and double check things myself. So this formula predicts 3,622.83 kiloelectron volts, and in game I get exactly that. So that's nice. As for the focus, I'm happy to report that the wiki is accurate. So here F beam is the output focus, the focus of the output beam. F sub I is the input focus, focus of the input beam. And F sub M is this quantity defined below. So it's this whole shit where L is length and T is temperature of the coolant. This formula predicts that my output focus is 94, and it is. And also the lower T is, the better. And the lowest T we can get is 1 with supercoolant. Now it doesn't consume the coolant completely. We do get hot coolant back. So I do need to set up like a cryogenic freezer or maybe a mega vacuum freezer. And I'll have to do something similar for the Synchrotron as well. Okay, Synchrotron has been hooked up to this dual cryogenic freezer setup. It is not at all fast enough. I need way more of these, but this works for now. My next test has shown the successful conversion of electrons into photons in the Synchrotron. The energy works out correctly, the focus works out correctly, with a small caveat that I'm not able to test, and the amount does not work out correctly. So let me bring up the formulas. Here is the formula for the beam energy. There are only 3 variables here. So E sub I is the input energy of the electron beam. A sub T is the antenna tier, so that's just 2. And P is the total power supplied to the multi-block. So I have 4 ZPM energy hatches, which means I can do 8 amps of ZPM. So P is 8 times 131,072. Crucially, this E sub I has to be in kilo electron volts, and E sub beam, the output, is also in kilo electron volts. If you examine this formula more closely, the part in the parentheses, the larger P gets, so the more power you supply, the smaller that negative number becomes. At infinite input power, the whole term in the parentheses just becomes 1. So the stuff outside the parentheses is the upper limit of what the photon energy can be. If you want to increase the photon energy even more, you have to increase the input beam energy. There's no other way. These numbers check out for me, so onto the focus. For the focus, everything checks out for me. So here there are only 2 parameters. F sub I is the input focus, and T is the temperature of the coolant. The only issue is that if F sub I is lower than F sub M, then a different formula applies for F beam. And I am not able to test that formula. And I think the formula on the wiki might be wrong by a factor of 10, but I'm not sure and I can't test it. It's just a hunch. And finally, for the output rate, I found this very confusing, but I think I figured it out. The equation on the wiki is very similar to the equation I have. The equation on the wiki is actually the ratio of output rate to input rate. So all in all, this depends on the antenna tier, A sub T, the total power you put in, which is the total amperage times the voltage of your energy hatches, and finally A sub I is the input amount. And so this gets you the output amount, which is A sub beam. The words amount and rate are kind of interchangeable in this multi-block, or in this set of multi-blocks. And finally, the target chamber. This one, I don't think I need to test. I think it's pretty straightforward. So there is a minimum voltage you need to supply to the multi-block. What's actually important is that 1, you have the masks that get partially consumed. 2, your photon energy and focus are in the correct ranges here. And different engravings require different energies and different focuses. And amount. So amount here is not actually the amount you need. The more photons you provide, the faster the recipe will go. It's actually just the ratio of the amount required to the amount provided times 5. And that's the number of seconds it takes to finish your craft. So as you can imagine, if you supply an absolute metric shit fuckload of photons, these things are going to get engraved really fast. In the previous episode, I predicted that I would need multiple particle accelerators, and I do. I thought I would need 4, but actually I need 5. So I've gone through every single recipe here in the target chamber, and I've compiled the results into a table, and I've looked at the required photon energies and focuses, and yeah, I need 5, basically. There are 5, broadly speaking, 5 ranges of energies where I need to generate photons. For 2 of them, I can get away with using tungsten rods, but for the other 3, I have to use lanthanum hexaboride. It's just not possible to get those energies with tungsten rods. As for the lengths of the linear accelerators, I have worked those out as well. The first group needs energies between 2 and 4 electron volts, and for that, I need a length of 19. The second group needs energies between 8 and 10 electron volts. If I use tungsten rods, I can use a length of 21. If I use lanthanum hexaboride, I need a length of 23. Third group needs energies between 190 and 200 electron volts. I have to use lanthanum hexaboride for this, and a length of 25. The fourth group needs energies between 2000 and 3000 electron volts. This needs a length of 45, and also UHV power for the linear accelerator. The fifth and final group needs energies between 5000 and 9000. And this also needs UHV power, and it needs the maximum length of 81. I think for today, I'm just going to set up the very first one, because I don't have the time or materials to make more linear accelerator parts at the moment. I need to make more assembly lines first. I'm not willing to wait another day just to make another minimum length one. Also, I need to see if I can somehow route beamlines and avoid making multiple synchrotrons because these are also quite expensive. But yeah, today I'll try testing out the lowest energy beam, so the 2 to 4 electron volt beam. Interestingly, this requires me to underclock some of these machines. What I mean by that is I have ZPM hatches, but I actually should not use them because they're going to accelerate the electrons too much, and then the photons are going to have too high of an energy. So I actually need to provide an LUV hatch for the source chamber and also for the LINAC. Once I upgrade to hexaboride rods, this actually needs to be underclocked even more to IV. That's interesting. I don't think I've ever needed to underclock anything so far, which is cool. I like having to think about that. It's interesting. So to start off, I need to make some of these masks. And because these are partially consumed, I think probably the easiest way to automate this would just be to do an entire mask at a time. So my auto crafting will do, in this example, 100 batches of these per craft. That way I just supply a mask, and at the end of the process, it's just gone. And I don't have to deal with any partially consumed masks. All right, check out this recipe. 100 europium doped wafers. That's gonna hurt. 188 tungsten rods and a single mask for 6,400 integrated logic circuits. This is what the recipes are going to look like because of the number of uses. The 188 tungsten rods, it should actually be 187.5, but that's not really possible. So 188 with a little bit of waste is fine. And I get this number from looking at the amounts. So using the amounts from my equation before, I calculated that for this recipe, 100 crafts is going to take 187.5 seconds, and each rod lasts 1 second. So let's try it out, I guess. It's a little scary. Oh, actually, let me quickly explain this whole subnet system here. So I have my interface kissing an interface on this orange item delivery subnet. This orange subnet will deliver the wafers to the input bus, the masks to the focus input, and it goes all the way here to the source chamber, and this is where it delivers the tungsten rods. The blue subnet here is for coolant reprocessing. And currently my 2 cryogenics are not at all fast enough to keep up with this whole setup for 3 minutes. So I just put in a big batch of coolant inside, almost 10 million coolant. I think I have some more. Yeah, I have another 3 million that I made. This should last, and this is obviously a problem because I have to wait for the coolant to cool before I can do more crafts. But that's just a matter of making more freezers, maybe a mega vacuum freezer. That's a problem for another time. For now, I just want to test this to see if it works. So if I make my request for the integrated logic circuit, the rods have been delivered, the beam is going through, and hopefully, yes, we start seeing some integrated logic circuits. And these are coming in really fast. Holy shit, this is so fast. And the funny thing is, this isn't even that fast because I'm using the tungsten rods, which have 1/3 of the initial amount that the hexaboride rods do. These output at 20, but the hexaboride rods output at 60. So this could be even faster, but nice, this works. Thank you for watching this episode of the HamCorp Training Manual. In the next episode, I will descend from the high that physics gives me and return to the more mundane matter of making more assembly lines to parallelize the construction of more LINACs. I will also look at making lanthanum hexaboride rods. See you next time.